Hey kids, it's Mr. Fly here, hope you're well, and welcome aboard the Kawasaki Ninja 1100 SX, the bike that I've been borrowing for the last couple of weeks. So I was lucky enough to be the first UK motor vlogger to get an official press loan on this bike, so thank you Kawasaki UK for that. If you've not seen my first ride review of the bike, perhaps go back and check that out, because that's going to be, well, that covers things like what the bike's like to ride, spec, all the usual things you'd expect in a review. What this video is going to be about are really the lessons I've learnt. I've not ridden the bike quite as much as I would have liked the last couple of weeks. It has been over the Christmas period, and it seems like we've had nothing but fog for about the last 3 weeks, and it's been absolutely miserable out and about. Today's the first day we've seen some sunshine. You can see it's absolutely beautiful out here today, but it is only 2 degrees centigrade, so it's pretty flipping nippy out here, but it is absolutely lovely. Also had a bunch of questions from you guys after that first video, so let's nip back to the garage, get a bit warmed up and start to go through some of that stuff.
So welcome back to the Mr. Man Cave and the lovely Ninja 1100 SX, which sadly has to go back to Kawasaki UK next week. But before I send her back, I want to run you through the pros and cons of the bike I've learnt about the machine since I've had it. What are the negatives and positives of this machine? The sort of things that you might not pick up if you just did a 1 hour test ride. So I want to crack through those a little bit later in the video. Plus, I've got a load of questions from you guys as well from the first video. So thank you to everybody that sent questions in. The first couple are kind of related. And the first one comes from RedJack7581, who asks, is the switchgear backlit? So thank you, Red Jack, for the question. And then the other related question was from Phil B4205. He says, what are the headlights like? What's night lighting like? So without further ado, I thought I'd take the bike out at night and show you.
Crikey, the things I do for you folks, eh? Now, I kind of blame myself really, because I did say on my first ride review, if there's anything in particular you wanted to see, then let me know and I'd try and cover it in this more sort of in-depth summary type video. And something that several of you said actually is, can you show us what the lights are like at night? So here we go. I'm out on a very cold November night. I've got an ice warning on the dash. It's wet, it's about 3 degrees, and it's foggy as well as dark. So yeah, pretty good test for what the lights are like. At the moment they're on dip, and I have to say they're absolutely excellent. They are obviously LED lights. If I've got a complaint, maybe the throw is a little bit short. If I put them on full, there we go, we push the, oh, there's a car coming. To put them on full, you basically, your left hand trigger finger pushes the little button forward, and then to bring them back to dip you just tap it again, and then to flash it you put it towards you in the usual kind of way that the, you know, pretty common on bikes, isn't it? I have to say this is full beam now, and yeah, the lights very good indeed. On full beam there's a heck of a throw. I don't suppose you're getting much of an impression through the camera, although I have to say these Osmo action cameras are pretty good in low light, so it's probably better than you used to get when I used to do this on my GoPros. But yeah, lights fantastic. Alright, so the headlight, absolutely no problem there. I've got cars with worse headlights than that. That is absolutely brilliant. In terms of the dash, it's gone to night mode, very easy to read. And then the switchgear itself, as you can see, if you're looking down at the handlebars, it is not lit. So many bikes don't like the switchgear, don't they? Which is such a pain. I don't know why they don't, but you're lucky if you get a bike these days with lit switchgear. Luckily, it's not that complicated, the switchgear on here. Well, I have to go back to dip again. Hopefully you can see it's a bit foggy. But yeah, overall, absolutely no issue riding at night. I'm not a big fan of riding motorcycles at night, to be honest, and I avoid it if I possibly can. But if you had to ride it at night, then there is, you know, there's nothing wrong with these lights at all. They're absolutely brilliant. Shame the switchgear is not backlit though.
All right, so much for riding at night then. Let's get back to your questions. Next one comes from Nigel Lock Y9M. Thank you for your question, Nigel. He says, what is the spring rating on the rear Olin shock, please? The one on display at the NEC Bike Show had a 105 rating spring on it. Hint, the numbers are printed on one of the cores of the rear spring. Crikey, you're asking me complicated questions. Let me have a look, Nigel, on that Olin spring in the back there. Just here, the only number I can see printed on it here is 629. Does that mean anything to you? Maybe that doesn't answer your question, but anyway, it says 629 on the spring. All right, thanks, Nigel, for that question. Moving on. Tick the Dog asks, what is the underseat storage like? I don't honestly know. Let's whip the seat off and have a look. There we go. Oh, bingo. slightly more under there than I anticipated. Look at that. The front seat is actually bolted on. You need Allen keys to take that off. But the rear one that comes off with the keys does have this quite useful bit of storage in there. You can definitely get a few sarnies in there or something. There's a little tiny little toolkit in there. But yeah, under seat storage looks pretty good. Hopefully that answers your question, Tick the Dog. Right, another question from Nigel Locke. He asked, is it possible to unplug and remove the phone mount and the USB pod thing from the handlebars here? I get what you mean. These come on the SP, but they do look a bit sort of bolted on, don't they? A bit aftermarket. So, yeah, if you want to remove them, just having a look here, yeah, you can certainly unbolt that. There's a couple, it's on a rubber mount. There's a couple of nuts there. Yeah, you could undo that. Allen keys, that can come off. This one, looking around the front, yeah, we've got a bolt on there. That can come off as well, no problem. You're going to end up with a little bit of a mount thing here, but it would definitely tidy up. Most of that comes off, so I think, yeah, no worries. If you don't like the look of all that, you can remove that. Right, I need to jump back on the bike for the other questions.
Right, next question comes from Dennis Gearside 4462. Thank you for your question, Dennis. He asks, does it have self-cancelling indicators? So I've just come off that roundabout, and you can see my indicator is indicating left, which is going to be confusing for the car behind. So I shall cancel it now, because that has answered that question. No, it doesn't have self-cancelling indicators. Somebody else asked a question, I'm sorry, I didn't actually make a note of your name, sir, I think it was a sir, about whether you could actually dial out the harshness in the suspension. I think I said in the first ride review that despite having the Öhlins, it was set a little bit harsh for my liking out of the factory. Well, I have wound the preload off a fair bit, a good 2 or 3 winds back since I made that video, and this is a pretty bumpy road, and I have to say it does feel much more plush. So I think the answer to that question is yes, because it's fully adjustable, you can dial out the harshness that I felt on the factory setting. So thumbs up for that one. Right, the next question comes from Crowbiker 4462. Thank you, Crowbiker, for your question. He asked, what the revs like at 70 miles an hour in top gear, because he said the old bike was a bit rev happy in that situation. So I've come out here to a bit of local dual carriageway. Just up here we go to national speed limit. I can wind her up to 70 miles an hour in 6th, and I can let you know. So there we go, there's 70, 6th gear. I'm doing 4,500 RPM, which doesn't seem too rev happy to me. It red lines at 10.5 this. So no, it's even at, look, an indicated 72 in top gear, 4,500 RPM, it feels relaxed. So yeah, if that was an issue before, it's not an issue now. Right, let's get back to the warm garage to thaw out a bit and go through those pros and cons that I learnt during the time that I've had the bike.
Right, welcome back to the garage, and you remember I said at the start of the video that we go through the pros and cons that I've learnt on the bike, the negative and positive points on the bike that I've learnt during the time that I've had it, the sorts of things you might not pick up on a test ride. So without further ado, let's crack through the negative points first, get them out of the way. Right, first point is the heated grips on the bike. It's great that the SE comes with heated grips, but unfortunately they do turn themselves off when you turn the bike off. Well, that's a fortunate thing because it doesn't run the battery out, of course, but then when you turn the bike on, they're in the off position again. They don't sort of stay set on the setting you had it before. It's a very minor point. It's just annoying that every time you get on the bike in the winter, you have to turn the heated grips back on. Talking of riding in winter, this thing being a fully kitted out sport tourer, it would be lovely if it had an option for a heated seat. It doesn't have that, so you get a cool backside on it. I've been sport with my Goldwing. Right, something else that came up a lot after that first video is the fact that on this bike, it being a sport tourer, you can either have panniers or you can have a top box. You can't have both, and that's a bit naff, isn't it, for a sport tourer? I'm sure there might be aftermarket options. The issue is there's a slightly different mount if you want to have the top box on the back of the bike, so you can't then put the panniers on this little these clever little mounts here because you've got a different mount for the top box. Now I suspect Kawasaki do that for, covering their back sides. There's probably an issue with loading on the back or something like that, or maybe it's stability at high speed, I don't know. But you can't have the official Kawasaki panniers and top box on at the same time, and that's just a bit naff for a touring bike. Right, another really small point, this side stand here, when you put it down, this spring just isn't quite strong enough. It just feels a bit loose when you put it down. It could do with a bit more of a macho spring on that side stand. Again, tiny point, I'm clashing at straws. Look at that exhaust. There aren't too many people that would say that's an attractive looking exhaust. It's a necessary evil, Euro 5 Plus, or is it 6 Plus, and all that game. It is a bit of an ugly looking exhaust. Many people mentioned that in the first review video I did, and I agree, it's not the prettiest looking thing ever, is it? Something else that came up in the comments that I wasn't aware of is that, as you know, this bike over its predecessor has gone up 100cc, this now being the 1100 SX, previously the 1000 SX. Somebody mentioned that the 1000cc point is when insurance premiums go up, and he had added an insurance premium that was £1,000 more because it was now an 1100 and not on 1000. Now, of course, that very much depends on your personal situation and circumstances. That may not happen for you, but it's worth checking out the insurance situation on this versus the old bike if you're thinking of upgrading. Number of people pointed out following my first ride review that this was a bit disappointing, what I call a piss pot brake reservoir, and I do kind of agree. Plastic seems a bit cheapo, doesn't it? But having said that, at least it's not one of those white ones like you used to get, so I don't think it's that bad. And last thing while we're on the negatives and the whinging is this screen on here. It does a good job at giving you smooth airflow, but it's very, very noisy when you ride the bike. You're not battered to death by turbulence, which I guess is the main thing, but it is a noisy screen, this, and that surprised me a bit. Right, enough of the whinging, let's get on to the positives. First positive on my list is the looks of the bike. I mean, just look at that. I think this bike looks absolutely beautiful. It is, of course, thoroughly subjective, but I think this new shade of green that they've got it in just looks good. I do like these old school sports tourers. I think it looks like a motorcycle should look, and for me, that's a major positive point. Next major positive for me is this 4-cylinder engine. It is super smooth, and again, if you're going to be doing long journeys, it is a touring motorcycle, then a smooth engine for me is a must, and this one is super smooth. Allied with the engine, of course, is the punch and power that it comes with. This bike absolutely flies if you want it to. It's a beautiful thing. When you get to where you're going to go touring, you're going to have some fun on this. All right, next on my list is the comfort on this bike. This seat is lovely and comfortable, and again, something that you absolutely definitely need on a sports touring bike. It's got these nice upright handlebars. They're not clip-ons or anything like that. It is, even though it looks like a sports bike, the riding position is very comfortable on here, and that's a massive pro for me. I quite like the fact that this bike is not overladen with unnecessary electronics. It's got absolutely everything you need, and it's nicely presented on the TFT, but it hasn't got all sorts of stuff that you don't need. It hasn't got, umpteen levels of wheelie control, launch control, all that sort of thing. You wouldn't expect it on a sport tourer, but I think it's got just about the right amount of electronics on this, and for me, that's a plus. Talking about the electronics and so on, and looking at the switchgear on here, I have to say this is all very intuitive to use. I'm one of those people that doesn't read a manual unless I absolutely have to, and I have to say, using all the switchgear on here, very straightforward. It didn't take me long. 5 minutes riding the bike, you can work out what it all does. It's all very intuitive. I like that. Again, it's just not too complicated. Next up, this quick shifter. It is absolutely lovely. I love a quick shifter. It works up and down, by the way, but the quick shifter on here is one of the smoothest I've ever used, particularly when you're going up through the box. Not so much when you're going down, but absolutely beautiful quick shifter. Silky smooth to use. I love that. And last but by no means least on the pros of the bike is the pricing. I think the pricing on this is pretty good for what you get. It's a beautiful bike. The quality of build is amazing, as hopefully you can see on the video here. But pricing wise, the SE comes in at $13,999, so just under 14 grand for this, the top spec one. If you want the basic bike that doesn't have quite the trinkets in terms of the Olin suspension, the braking components, that comes in at $12,249, which I think is excellent.
So there we have it. That's pretty much it for my summing up of the new Ninja 1100 SX. I didn't get to ride the bike quite as much as I wanted because it has been particularly cold and miserable and foggy, as I said, during the Christmas period that I've had the bike. But I have very much enjoyed riding it, and I liked the bike before in the old 1000 SX form, and they've just improved it. There's no more downsides, even though I came up with that list of negatives. Most of those were pretty small things. I was kind of clutching at straws. If you're in the market for a sports tourer, then absolutely check this out. I think it's a lovely bike, and it certainly ticks all the boxes for me. Huge thank you to Kawasaki UK for lending me the bike, and a huge thank you to you for watching the videos as usual. Look forward to speaking to you again soon. Until then, this has been the Mr. Flyer. Cheerio. Oh, forgot to mention, a number of you asked, what's it like with a pillion on the back? Well, unfortunately, my missus, who's my usual pillion, won't go on the back of any bike without a top box, and I don't have a top box for this. And anyway, when you have these press bikes, they don't insure you to ride with a pillion, so unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to try it with a pillion. Sorry about that, lots of people asked that question.